Mitako yapi. Oyate tchecha o mani e macha pelo. Naha iuha chante washte anape chuza pelo. Hello, relatives. I just introduced myself in my language, Lakota. I said my Lakota name is Walks with the Young Nation or Walks with the New Nation. And I said I welcome you all with an open heart and a handshake. I also go by Frank Waln. I'm a Sichungu Lakota music producer, audio engineer, multi-instrumentalist, hip-hop artist, and storyteller from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. And I am super excited and honored to be here sharing some of my music, my work, my stories, my life, and my home with you all. My performance will be very much rooted in the Lakota tradition of storytelling. So I come from a long line of storytellers. All indigenous nations, have stories and storytellers, and our stories survive throughout time. And I think there's so much power in stories, not only historical, but our personal stories, and connecting those stories to history. And where I come from, culturally speaking, my people never share a song without sharing the story of where that song came from. And so I very much perform in the same way. So you're going to be hearing a lot of stories connecting my life to history, connecting our lives to history, and connecting us to each other. I think stories are also the glue that binds us together as human beings on this planet. This first song I'm going to do for you all is called Home. And I'm going to be playing some instruments for you all today, as well as, sharing songs. And this is one of my ancestral instruments. This is a native flute. And I'm going to be sharing several songs on the flute with you all. This is one of my favorite instruments, and like I said, my ancestral one. And this first song was born out of the desire to express what home meant to me, but I can't put it into words. And I don't know one person in this world who has an easy definition of home. Everybody I know has a pretty complex definition and explanation of what home means to them. And I think especially for all black and brown people, coming from colonization, coming from genocide, coming from slavery, a lot of us are displaced from our homelands, are removed from our homelands through genocide and war and slavery. Some of us had our homelands taken away. Right now, a lot of us are quarantined. We got to be at home. There's some people who don't have homes, some people who don't have safe homes. So this song is just for all of us who wrestle with the definition of what home means to us, or also those of us who are still defining what home means to us. Because for me, even though I was born and raised on my people's homelands, home exists for me in a lot of different places and a lot of different people. And like I said, sometimes I can't express what I feel in English words, and so I put it into the music. This song is called Home, and this is for all of us who were displaced from our homelands. Thank you all very much. That song was called Home. And like I said, that's for all of us who are wrestling with the definition of home and what that means for you. I'm going to do another song about home. I'm going to tell you all, you're going to hear a lot about my home and where I come from. I come from the Rosebud Reservation in South Central South Dakota. That's where I was born and raised. And I'm going to be telling you stories from home, you know, and stories about my experience as an Indigenous person, but I do not claim to speak for all Indigenous people. You know, in the United States alone, you're talking about over 560 different federally recognized tribes. And so, you know, you're literally talking about hundreds of different nations, hundreds of different cultures, languages. We are not a monolithic culture. We are not one people with one culture, even one language. And so, you know, I don't claim to represent all Indigenous people, but because of our shared history and our shared land, you know, there are commonalities in our experiences. And this next song I'm going to do for you all is a culmination of, I would say, my music journey. I've been on this music path journey for the majority of my life. I started playing piano when I was 7 years old. And then, you know, I was in a traditional Lakota drum group, and I would just learn instruments as I got older. And I started writing poetry. I started turning those poems into songs. And I made music and turned to music out of a desire to express myself and to find some healing, I think, in everything I was going through. And so all of my songs are usually born out of healing experiences. And this song I'm about to do for you all is called Concentration Camp Blues. And I called this song Concentration Camp Blues because when I left my reservation to attend college, I was very fortunate to receive a scholarship. And I bounced around a bit, but I eventually landed in Chicago, Illinois, where I got my Bachelor of Arts in Audio Arts and Acoustics as a music producer and audio engineer. And when I moved to the big city like Chicago that was far away from my reservation, you know, there's no federally recognized tribes in Illinois. There used to be. Chicago used to be actually a gathering place for a lot of different tribes because it was located near the water, and the land was very sacred and powerful. But nowadays, I meet a lot of people, you know, in Chicago that think Native people don't exist, or they have a lot of misconceptions about us. And one of those misconceptions being that reservations were some sort of handout, you know, or some sort of like gift to us. And I called this song Concentration Camp Blues because reservations in the United States were either one of two things usually. First, they were death camps, concentration camps, where they marched us to die during a genocide. Or they were hard-fought, you know, ancestral land that a tribe and a nation really fought hard to maintain and lock down, and the government couldn't take it from them, so then they just gave it to them. But my reservation was a concentration camp where my people were marched to die, like I said. And when you're born and raised in the remnants of a concentration camp, that comes with a whole mess of struggles that I think a lot of people aren't aware of, indigenous communities facing. And so I speak on some of that in that song, and you know, I have a line that says, "Concentration camp blues will never make the news. These settlers rigged the game when they made the rules." And it just make you think about how many times you hear about indigenous stories in the news or in the media. And that was one of the reasons I chose to tell my story and to share my stories through my media, through my music, because I saw a lack of Native representation in us telling our own stories. So I decided to take the reins and tell my own story. This is Concentration Camp Blues. And this song was born out of a flute song. And then I performed at the Apple store in downtown Chicago, and I had to use an Apple product. And so I downloaded a beat-making app to my iPad, and I made the song you're about to hear. with nights banging out beats on that laptop screen, with nothing but your heart telling you you're right. I spent years in the dark just to find my light. Shout out my mother and my aunties, cause they raised us all in a settler colonial state that called them squaw. I'm from the res, commod fed and raised on ball. That means I bled to shed over things I saw, yeah. So I ain't one to judge, with loved ones doing time and everyone on drugs. We used to run around the res, now we pray and smudge. Now I understand why ancestors prayed for us, yeah. You see, in the beginning, a reservation was a camp of concentration. It was either that or lands hard fought, maintained and protected by nations for generations. A reservation is a nation beyond concentration camp blues. These are dark times, hard times, oh tahiyalo. Chante yoke, sit your hoke, sheila me low. If you gotta know, I got a heavy heart, every part is that way down with the heavy scar. And I got them in the place I'm from. Some call it reservation, some call it concentration. Concentrating the trauma of genocide up in the nation. The system murders us, call it premeditation. Tragic death becomes a circumstance. They outlawed our songs and wouldn't let us dance. And now it gives me the blues. They say we're red, to them we're dead, my people set up. Concentration camp blues never make the news. Concentration camp blues never make the news. These settlers rigged the game when they made the rules. These settlers rigged the game when they make the rules. Our cultures hold the truth to see you through. The fires in our youth ancestors return soon. The fires in our youth ancestors return soon. Thank you. So again, I called that song Concentration Camp Blues to just, remind people that we live in a country where concentration camps and death camps did happen, and we live in a country where, in fact, a genocide happened and a Holocaust happened. And I descended from survivors of that genocide. In the United States alone, there were hundreds of millions of indigenous people pre-colonization, and 99.8% of us were slaughtered during that genocide. So I think it's important that every American person at least understands the basics of the land they're living on and how this country was founded. And it was founded in genocide, and I think it's a big part of our story that we need to learn or be reminded of. And I'm going to share a song and a story next that for me is an example of why it is important we learn about this history and we learn about the land we live on. So this message I'm about to or this song and story I'm about to share with you all is very heavy, and it's very heavy for me to share, and it's very traumatic. And so I'll give a few trigger warnings before I get started. I'm going to be talking about medical violence, hospital violence, seizures, and suffocation. And all of that to say, this song I'm about to share for you all was born out of not only a traumatic experience, but the need to heal from that experience, like I said. And also rooted in a Lakota tradition. So something that my people do and I was taught to do is to call your spirit back every day. Your spirit can leave you, or if you're traveling, your spirit can stay in a place if you really like that place. So we were always taught to call your name 4 times, every day, to call your spirit back. And we're also taught that in trauma, your spirit can leave you entirely or even in pieces. And so being a survivor of genocide and coming from a community that experienced a lot of violence, there's definitely a lot of mental health issues, and, in my own life, in my own family, in my own community. And I used to never have the language to understand this until recently. I didn't even realize I had things like anxiety and depression and PTSD because of genocide. And I went through an experience last February that changed my life forever. And I had been dealing with, like I mentioned, things like depression and anxiety and PTSD before, but this experience I'm about to share with you all really amplified everything, and I'm still healing from it to this day, and it affects me every day. So, I feel like I need to share this. In February of 2019, I had a seizure for the first time in my life. I had a stress-induced seizure. I kind of worked myself to the limit. I'd been working really hard most of my life in order to create the career you see and to be able to do things like this incredible opportunity arts across America. It's been a long journey coming from a community that's represents one of the poorest communities and underrepresented communities in this country. I had to just work very hard to get to where I'm at. And the consequence of that was pushing myself to the limit last year, and I ended up having a seizure. I was in Chicago. The ambulance had to be called. I was taken by ambulance to a very prominent hospital on the south side of Chicago. And when I arrived at this hospital, and what happened to me was nothing short of medical violence rooted in ignorance and racism towards indigenous people. And I share this story again to remind us of why it's important to even know the basics about indigenous people and the people whose land we live on and the people we live around. Because when I arrived at the hospital, because of my appearance, the first thing the doctors assumed was I was smoking PCP, and that's what had caused my seizure. Despite my relatives telling them, no, I do not do drugs, they did not believe my relatives until my blood test came back clean. And so I was taken in the hospital. I was unconscious. I had the seizure on a Friday evening, and I was unconscious for at least 2 days. I don't remember any of what I'm about to tell you. I had to be told by my relatives. So when I was in the hospital, I was intubated with a tube down my throat, and I became conscious, which wasn't supposed to happen. And this exists in my brain like a vague memory, becoming conscious, and I immediately felt like I was suffocating because a year prior to that, I had an accident scuba diving where I actually almost drowned in an ocean and almost suffocated. And so I already had a lot of PTSD about suffocation. And when I came to in the hospital intubated, it made it worse, and it just made my reaction traumatic. I felt like I couldn't breathe, and I immediately just started reaching for the tube in my throat and trying to get to a state where I could breathe. And what ended up happening was the hospital marked me with combative disorder. They had several men come in the room and hold me down into the bed as I was struggling. They pumped me full of sedatives, including a spinal tap. And then they strapped me and locked me into the bed with locked restraints for at least a day and a half. And like I said, pumped me full of a lot of sedatives. And so that happened Friday. I became conscious on Sunday evening, and I was not aware of what had happened to me. I woke up and I saw my mother had driven out from my reservation along with a sister of mine. I had to be told why they were there, why I was in the hospital. I did not remember anything what had happened to me. And a lot of it was because of the seizure plus the anesthesia and the spinal tap really messed with my memory, still to this day. And so when I became conscious, my relatives told me what had happened, why I was strapped in the bed, because I was covered in bruises from head to toe, and my whole body looked like and felt like I had been ran over by a truck. And when I became conscious, they moved me from ICU to the regular floor. And when they did that, a psychologist came in, and he kicked my family out of the room. And luckily, before that happened, my family had prepared me for this moment. My family told me that another thing the hospital did, rooted in their ignorance about indigenous people, was they saw that I have some scars on my body. So I have scars on my body that I got from a Lakota ceremony that we do to pray. It's a spiritual ceremony. It's one we have been doing for thousands of years on this continent. And it actually used to be illegal for us to practice our ceremonies until 1978 under U.S. law, believe it or not. And I'm going to talk about that law a little bit later. But I have scars on my body from Lakota ceremonies. And when the doctor saw these scars, they marked it as self-mutilation, despite my relatives and family saying, no, this is how we pray. This is our religious freedom. This is our religious right. We actually have an act of Congress passed to protect us to do our ceremonies. 1978, the Indian Religious Freedom Act. The doctors did not listen to my family. They marked me with combative disorder. They marked me with self-mutilation. And essentially what they tried to do, the psychologist came in. He started questioning me about my scars. He started questioning about my reaction, why I panicked when I came in. I told him I felt like I couldn't breathe. I told him I almost drowned before. They were trying to make it seem like I was a madman, and they were trying to send me to the psych ward and trying to use that to justify all the violence they had inflicted upon me at that point in me and my body. Like I said, I was covered in bruises from head to toe. And so I dodged the questions, and the psychologist left. Luckily, I did not get sent to the psych ward, and they let my family come back in the room. And I want to just know, I spoke earlier how, you know, it used to be illegal for Native people under U.S. law to practice our ceremonies and our religions. And this law was in place for almost 100 years, from 1884 to 1978. And it was a part of that genocide, because not only did the U.S. government try to exterminate us entirely, they could not. You know, we went to war with them. Every nation went to war with the government, and it became more fiscally reasonable for the government to stop going to all-out physical war with us and then take the war to the laws and to try to exterminate our culture. And so, you know, the phrase during the time was "kill the Indian, save the man." They wanted to destroy our culture and assimilate us into becoming white Americans. And a part of that assimilation process was to make our cultures illegal. And they did under U.S. law. It was our songs, our dances, our languages, our ways of praying. They called it our religions, and they made it illegal under U.S. law until 1978, until the Indian Religious Freedom Act. So my mom grew up in a time when it was illegal to be Lakota. And if I take you to my home state of South Dakota, you will see old, in rural South Dakota, old giant rundown buildings that say a sane asylum for Indians, because they said, the government said we were worshiping the devil when we were doing ceremony, and they would arrest us in South Dakota, and they would actually throw us in insane asylums. And so, you know, I after that experience I went through when I was healing, I was thinking about everything that had happened to me, and I realized, wow, even though the Indian Religious Freedom Act passed in 1978, granting me the right to practice my ceremonies, in 2020, in 2020, as a Lakota person, I almost got sent to the psych ward for doing ceremony the same way my ancestors did, because of that ignorance, because of that genocide, because of that misunderstanding of our history. And so when I became conscious after all of that violence the hospital put me through, they actually damaged my body more. And so when I became conscious, the doctor told me that I needed to stay in the hospital, because I ended up having to stay in the hospital for a whole week, because when they cause that much muscle trauma and shoot that many sedatives into young people's bodies all at once, and I had just had a seizure too right before that, because I'm only 31, and then they put all that into my body at once, it can cause a spike in an enzyme in our blood called the creatine kinase enzyme. It's called the CK enzyme that helps with our kidneys, our liver. It helps flush our blood and helps maintain the flushing of our body. And normal levels are between 300 and 500. And when I became conscious on Sunday, because of all the violence the hospital has inflicted upon my body, my CK levels were over 40,000, and it was damaging my liver and kidneys. And I had to stay in the hospital for a week while they flushed me with IVs every day, undoing the damage that they had done to my body. And so I went through that experience. It was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life. I'm still healing from it. I still have a lot of memory issues. I'm still dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, PTSD. I wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I'm suffocating and being held down, you know. But when I got home, I felt like my spirit had left my body entirely. You know, like I said, Lakotas believe that our spirits can leave us. And you know, through my time of getting therapy, I learned some of the science behind this, you know, some of the science behind PTSD, and it puts context to something that my ancestors believed. And I highlight this with Western science to show that my people actually were scientists, despite the fact that settlers said we were ignorant savages that didn't have an understanding of anything, and we were just these devil worshippers. But according to psychology, when you go through a traumatic experience, when your brain and your body realize that you're in a life or death moment, you enter a fight or flight state. And what happens is your body and your mind kind of puts a snapshot around who you are at that time, and it stores it away, your memory, everything, because you have to turn into fight or flight mode. You go into survival mode. And after that, two things happen. Either you survive or you don't make it. And if you survive, which we all did because we're here, that memory, that feeling, everything that snapshot took is still in your body, still in your brain. And when we're triggered and we have PTSD, that's what we're reminded of that state, and it's still in there until we process it. And so, I needed to call my spirit back because of all that violence. And like I said, it was something my ancestors had always done, but when I got home from the hospital, I felt like I needed to write a song to do that. And so again, I turned to my ancestral instrument, the flute, because I couldn't put it into English words. And when I got home, I picked up the flute and I played this song on my back deck, exactly how you hear it. Never in my life have I ever had a song already in my head. I've had to work on songs. You write songs, you change pieces, you add something, you take something away. Music, my songs are always evolving. But this song was already there, just waiting for me to play, just waiting for me to share. And so this is the Calling Your Spirit Back song. And this is for all of us who have experienced trauma. Maybe, it's got you thinking about your own traumas and your own things you've been through. And I believe this song isn't just for me, but for all of us to, call yourself back from that trauma, whatever it may be, whatever experience. Even if it's something minor, your spirit can, just a piece of you can leave and you might not feel whole. But this is a song to help us feel whole again. Thank you all very much. So like I said, that was the Calling Your Spirit Back song. And I wrote that song to call my spirit back after a very traumatic experience that I shared with you all. And if you all like these flute songs and these stories, in the spring, actually right after that experience, because my body and my brain, everything about me was so beat up, I couldn't even really make music like I used to. So I released my first ever flute album. And I also shared the stories of where all those songs come from, including the song and story you just heard. And it's on all streaming platforms. It's called, and also the songs were recorded outdoors. So that's another thing that was special about that. I wanted to really capture, what it's like just sharing music outside with people. And so I recorded the songs in places and spaces outdoors that are important to me, including my home reservation, including, the place, the traumatic story I just shared with you. The hospital was next to a big park. I recorded the Calling Your Spirit Back song in that park to call my spirit back from the hospital. But the album is called Aloha Wetu, which is the Lakota words for spring songs. So those were songs that I recorded and released during the spring. And I just want to say thank you to all the comments, everyone, showing love, just saying thank you to me for sharing that story and just saying that you learned something and it touched you. I want to say thank you because, like I said, that story is not easy for me to share, and I'm still healing. It's not even been a year. And so just hearing and feeling that support from you all definitely means a lot to me. I'm going to keep it going here, and like I said, I'm a multi-instrumentalist. I'm going to bring out another instrument that's a favorite of mine. I'm going to bring out the acoustic bass. And I'm going to share a song on the acoustic bass for you all now. And so, a lot of my songs exist in different versions, and I have acoustic songs of versions of all my songs that I play at home. I'm going to share one of them with you all here. And actually this song comes with a story that's very personal to me. This song actually is a song I wrote as a birthday present for my mother. So I'm gonna tell you all about my mother, because my mom and my aunties and my grandma, actually, because I am the product of strong Lakota women. I was raised by a single mother on my reservation. My mom and dad split up when I was 3. My dad's from my tribe too, but he's a violent guy, and I witnessed a lot of things I shouldn't have when I was younger before we got away from him. And then we moved in with my mom's family on a reservation, which my mom's family runs a ranch on a reservation. So I grew up on a ranch ran by Lakota women. And my mom actually used to rodeo, all my aunties rodeo. My family used to have rodeo stock. And so I had a pretty unique upbringing in that way. I grew up out in the country. And when I was in college, I wanted to do something special for my mom's birthday, but I didn't have any money. I was on scholarship. I was a starving artist. And my mom doesn't really like parties. And I couldn't buy her nothing. So I decided to use my gift of songwriting to create her a gift and write her a song to honor her. Because the older I got and the older I get, the more I realize just everything my mother has done for me. All the sacrifices she made, and I wouldn't be here without her. I wouldn't even be able to be sharing these songs with you all. She encouraged me every step of the way. She helped me get my first pieces of studio gear, brought me my first ever drum machine to make beats. And so I just really wanted to honor her. But this song is called Like a Rock, and it goes even deeper than just wanting to honor my mother. This song actually comes from our Lakota creation story. So I'm gonna share that story with you all. And every nation, every indigenous nation all over the world, every continent got indigenous nations. They all got a creation story, an origin story of how their people and the world, the universe came to be. And a lot of these stories for me are kind of like Greek mythology. It's not like super literal, like Zeus wasn't coming down and doing all that, but there's lessons in it, and it's metaphorical. And so this story is the same. And Lakota people, our creation story, believe that before all of creation, everything we know now, there was only darkness and nothingness. And there was only one being that existed, and that being was rock or stone. And our Lakota word for rock is Ian. And Ian wasn't like the rocks and stones we know and see today. It was alive, it was living and breathing, it had life, it had blood, it was huge, it was massive. And Ian bled some of its blood and gave some of its life to create the earth and the sky and stars and water. And then when that happened, earth was alive, and earth said to rock, I am cold. Can you create something to protect me, take care of me, keep me warm, provide for me? And rock said to earth, if I sacrifice myself and I give the last of my life, the last of my blood, to create beings to protect you and take care of you, Earth. You must reciprocate that relationship. You must return that relationship. You must also take care of and provide for the beings I create for you. And you must protect them and take care of them. Earth agreed. And when that happened, a pact was made. An eon, stone, rock, bled the last of its life and the last of its blood, and created plants, humans, animals. All of creation came to be. And when that happened, rock died, and it shriveled, and it hardened, and it fell to earth. And that's all the rocks and stones we see on earth today. And that's why a lot of indigenous nations use hot stones in their ceremonies even. It's rooted in our stories. But like I said, in this story comes lessons. And a lot of our founding philosophies as a nation and as a people. And so, one of them being, we are all related, Mitakuye Oyase. We all come from a common source, Eon. If you pay attention to that pact they made, we were put on Earth to take care of Earth, and Earth takes care of and provides for us. And Earth will treat you the way you treat it. And you know, we see the results of us mistreating Earth, everything happening around the world today. Another founding philosophy in the story is our Lakota word and concept for woman. So our word for rock is Eon. Our Lakota word for woman is Weon, which comes from our word for rock. Because we were a matriarchal society pre-colonization, and we understood that women were the creators and source of all of life, and that they gave their life, they sacrificed, they bleed to create life. And so that's why we called women Weon, like Eon, and we respected them like we respected Eon. And so that's why I call this song Like a Rock, because this is for the one that created me and gave me life. This is for my mother. 89, we said hello, he said goodbye, daddy left when I was 3, it made us cry, you and I, we had to make it, we found a way, drama came, and friends left, but mama stayed, through everything, all the fights, and all the shame, all the change, I hate that man, don't want his name, told my mom, that I'm a one, couldn't understand, all the things going on between her and my fam, but I was stubborn, I know that it made things hard, you always said, son, I know you're gonna take things far, believe that, I need that in dark times, I think of what you did for me and my heart shines, you took my hand up this mountain, made it your climb, so when I shine, mom, you shine, yeah, a single mother with the odds stacked, you found a way, one day I'll bring it all back, lives all my life, just me and you, every single storm that you see me through, cause I ain't have a dad and we ain't need no man, raised by a woman, you made me a man, I gotta leave home cause my heart will roam, I gotta let you know that you're not alone, our love is like a rock and you will be my stone, forever in my heart, forever you're my heart, you always gave me what I needed, somehow always found the time, single parent, it's apparent that you stayed up on your grind, I remember you would put me first, it was hard but you said son it could be worse, and you were right, it's funny looking back the days were sunny, you kept me smiling even though we didn't have the money that other people did, somehow you made it happen, I promised mom that I'm gonna do it when I'm rapping, cause you took me everywhere in my cap and my backpack, 20 years later now I'm rapping and snapbacks, I'm rocking these long braids, we came a long way, you kept me on the right road away from the wrong way, forever I'm grateful for the life you gave, the tears that we cried, the sacrifice you made, yeah, a single mother with the odds stacked, you found a way, one day I'll bring it all back, lives all my life, just me and you, every single storm that you see me through, cause I ain't have a dad and we ain't need no man, raised by a woman, you made me a man, I gotta leave home cause my heart will roam, I gotta let you know that you're not alone, our love is like a rock and you will be my stone, forever in my heart, forever you're my heart, you're my stone. I dedicate that song to all of our mothers, our grandmothers, our big sisters, our aunties, all of the women that are the backbones of our families and our nations. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for enjoying the stories. Like I said, the stories are just as important to me as the music. So I appreciate the Kennedy Center for allowing me to share my stories, you know, songs and stories across Lakota Country. Thank you, Patty. I appreciate that as well. So I'm going to keep it rolling here. I'm gonna do something pretty cool and unique. I just shared with you all a song about my mother, incredible woman. I'm the product of her. I'm gonna share another song for you all that reminds me of my mom, but I think this is a song that a lot of us have heard of. I'm gonna do a cover song for you all, and I'm gonna actually do a native flute cover of Fleetwood Mac's Dreams. And the reason I'm doing this is my mom really loves Fleetwood Mac. She's one of the bands she raised me on. And, you know, the older I get, I also love them. And Dreams is a song I love. Dreams is a song my mother loves. And the song reminds me of home, but also Native people. You know, we come from people with spiritual gifts. And one of those gifts are dreaming. I believe that all Native people are dreamers, and I believe that our ancestors and spirits in the universe speaks to us through our dreams. I myself have had many dreams that have spoke to me, you know, in a lot of different ways. And so you're going to hear that energy in this song, and I completely reinterpreted it because I'm a producer. So I only used 4 instruments. Again, this is another way I try to approach my creativity from an indigenous perspective, you know, kind of use Lakota modalities, and one of them being, you know, the power of 4. My people acknowledge the 4 directions and a lot of things we did. And so I used 4 instruments to create this song: bass, flute, drums, and rattle. And you're going to hear that here. And I slowed it up a lot because I feel like sometimes when you slow up the music, you can feel it more and put a little more emotion into it. But the song is also, for me, powerful because I feel like our dreams and our ancestors in the universe, when they speak to us through our dreams, whether it's good or bad or neutral, it's always powerful and it always is moving. thank you all very much. That was, I call that my cover of Fleetwood Mac's Dreams in the key of Lakota. So if you like that, again, you can find all my music online. Appreciate you all. You see the Venmo link scrolling across there. Pretend I got my proverbial hat out, you know, sitting on the side of the road playing. Any and all support is welcomed and much appreciated. Those two songs are definitely dedicated to my mother. You know, I am the product of her, and I wouldn't be who I am without her. So I'm going to got a couple more songs for you all here. This next song I'm going to do is called Hope. And I wrote this song because, you know, I write songs to help me process and heal. I want to say thank you to you all for, you know, in the comments. I will definitely relay the messages to my mother. You're all praising her, definitely. You know, she deserves all the praise. So, like I said, I wrote a song called Hope, and I wrote this song because I needed some hope. I was inspired by a trip I took actually to a place called Palestine, and what I witnessed out there. You know, I came home with some hope, and the unique thing about this song I'm about to share with you all is it's primarily written in my language. So I've been speaking my language a bit. I introduced myself in my language, but I'm not fluent in Lakota. My great-grandmother took our language to the grave with her because, like I said, it was illegal when she was alive for us to speak our languages. They got persecuted for it. But also during that time, the U.S. government made it mandatory that all Native families send their children to government boarding schools where they were abused for speaking their language. A lot of children died. You know, it was one of the most atrocious pieces of this country's history, what happened to those children under the government rule in those schools. And a lot of the children actually died. A lot of children actually starved themselves. It was that rough for them to exist there because of the abuse. They cut their hair. They abused them every day. Those that survived were ashamed of being Native. And that was all of our great-grandparents. And so I decided to write a song called Hope and to use my songwriting to learn my language and reclaim my language. And so I'm working with language scholars back home. You know, our language is in a process of revitalization now. And so it is a life goal of mine to learn my language before I die, because my great-grandmother took it to the grave with her because she went through that boarding school process. And I didn't even know she was fluent until I was in my early 20s, long after she was gone. My mom said, yeah, your grandma Lulu, she could speak Lakota, but we didn't know because she would never speak around us. We only knew because when she would go around some other grandmothers, they would have a flea market every month in our community on the reservation. And when the grandmas would get around each other, they would speak Lakota to each other. And so they didn't teach it to their families because of the shame and because they had to stop speaking it to survive. And so what you're about to see, this next song, is born out of my process to remember, reclaim, and revitalize my language. And also to help spread some hope, because like I said, you know, coming from a genocide, hope is more than just a noun. I feel like it's a verb. It's something you have to practice daily, and you have to find that hope. And it's hard, but this song gives me hope. They have hope, so they are strong. Keep your hope, it makes you strong. da makochana oyate kito hani chung tu jik teshni yellow oyate kito hani chung tu jik teshni yellow. In the lands of the Lakota people, from my heart I will never forget you. Thank you. So I got one more song for you all. Thank you for the comments. Yes, there always has to be hope. And for anyone watching, you know, like I said, if you like the music, you can find my music online. Everyone's, you know, kind of saying thank you for sharing the songs, the stories. And I appreciate you all appreciating the stories, because like I said, that's just as important to me. You can find my music online. You can follow me on social media. It's the same as the Venmo going across, the @Frank Waln on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that. You know, stream my music, share my work with your people. This is Native Heritage Month, so share it with as many people as you can. I got one final song for you all. This last song I'm about to do is a thank you song, and this is another thing I do. Like I said, I try to create within Lakota modalities, and one of them being, you know, I just would look at what my ancestors would use music for, and they would use music to give thanks a lot. You know, we would write thank you songs all the time, and so I decided to write a thank you song, but I wrote this song for someone who saved my life. So I wrote this song for an elder back home, a late elder, a late medicine man who's like a grandfather to me. He passed away in the fall of 2018. But I would go to him for ceremony and for help, spiritual help. And he saved my life. You know, like I shared with you all after the hospital experience, you know, I dealt with things like depression and stuff. But before that, I struggled with depression. I struggled with anxiety. I struggled with suicidal ideation and PTSD because of traumas I had experienced in my home growing up, in my own life, you know, and my experience was not isolated. Native youth are 10 times more likely to commit suicide than the national average, 10 times more likely. And you know, Native women are like 4 times more likely to experience sexual violence. I mean, the stats are through the roof, and it's all rooted in that genocide. And so, you know, like I said, I shared a story of where that ignorance about that genocide is still harming people. I still almost got sent to the psych ward. I still got persecuted for being Lakota in 2020, you know, the same way my ancestors did the entire history of this country, you know. But we are in this country together now, and I think part of the government keeping that history hidden was to, you know, so people wouldn't rally behind us, so we wouldn't have solidarity, so people wouldn't know the history of this country and the injustices faced. And we know we're seeing a lot of injustices come out now, but, you know, Native people have been dealing with grave injustices under U.S. law since the beginning. And so, you know, like I said, one of those being we couldn't do ceremony. So this person that I wrote this song for kept these ceremonies alive in secret so that young people like me can participate and partake in them. And so when he passed, you know, it was a big part of my life missing. My whole community suffered the loss. We feel the loss. And, you know, I found a new place to pray now and a new person to go to, but my world got a lot darker without him. And so, you know, I went to him when I was very suicidal. I was 19 years old. I dropped out of school that year. I was going to take my own life, and I didn't have any hope. You know, making music wasn't even fun. You know, I had no hope, and my family was suffering. I had a lot going on, and I went to him for help, you know, and just prayed, and my life was saved, and dreams and things came to me that saved me, and he saved my life more than once. And so when he passed, I wrote this song for him. This is called Wopila, which is the Lakota word for thank you. But this is also a thank you to you all for tuning in, for listening, for, sharing your comments, for supporting me. Like I said, you can follow me online. You see the Venmo at Frank Waln. That's my social media too, at Frank Waln. You can find me and find my work there. All my stuff's online. This is thank you to all of you for tuning in. Thank you to the Kennedy Center for allowing me to participate in Arts Across America and share my songs and stories from Lakota Country. This is Wopila. All right, so that is my last song for you all. I am Frank Waln. I want to say thank you all to you all for tuning in. Thank you to the Kennedy Center for making this happen. Again, you all could follow me online, could follow my work, find my music online. Again, Wopila Tanka from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.